another number of people that need to be walked out of the building there.
At
But I'm
ATF?
not going to say any more about who that would be unless it gets to the point where it's my job to do it.
Okay, but you are. That was my question. Okay. Are there people at ATF that need to be shown the door?
Yes, sir.
Will they be if you get the job?
Yes, sir.
Okay, stairwell, I got high. Clear. Moving. Okay, next shot. Top stairs. Gotta get up there quick. Move. Leave the door. Leave the door.
Ready to die, bitch?
Dan, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. We've talked about this ATF director thing a lot. We've texted back and forth a lot. I know at one point I got you connected with some folks who could, maybe help a little bit, a lot. And we agreed that it was time to shut up and just let the process carry on. And so I've said nothing because I promised you I would say nothing. But now I feel because other people have said things that I think might be a tad, not a little tad off, maybe a little misleading unintentionally, that perhaps I better clarify a couple of things now that we've agreed that we will no longer be silent because we've reached that point. You have not yet become director of ATF, have you?
I haven't even been nominated. No, I'm not.
Right.
Even close.
Okay. And so I don't want to, I think it's important that we don't get ahead of our skis here, right? We're in the process of, the government is in the process, federal government's in the process of figuring out who they're going to nominate and who is going to fill that role. Right now, Kash Patel is filling it temporarily. You are in the mix, having been interviewed, and at this point, we're in the sit down, shut up, and wait mode for the government to, for the federal government to decide and for the president to make a decision. Is that where we're at?
Yes, Director Patel's in charge of ATF, and I have, nothing but good things to say about him and about that. I have been interviewed a couple of times by the transition team. I was told they'll get back to me after they do certain, whatever their next steps are. And if and when they get back to me, they may tell me they've gone another direction. They may tell me that, here's what's next. But until then, I'm just running the International Firearms Specialist Academy and
shooting the breeze with me.
Hear from the administration, but not yet. So
Yeah.
Who knows?
Now, have you talked to firearms advocacy agencies at all that are backing you? Are there any of those?
I've spoken to several of the Second Amendment, pro-Second Amendment groups and been interviewed by them, yes.
Yeah, I've heard good things about those interviews, by the way, in case you haven't. In the back channel kind of sort of way that knuckleheads like me find things out. I listen at keyholes or look through them or whatever. What I've been told, I don't know if this is accurate, but what I've been told is that this is kind of the process. You do a couple interviews, and then they just go completely silent. This administration doesn't leak much, and they punish leakers, and I think that's really great. So they go silent, and then when the president has decided and the transition team has made a decision, then you just get a phone call. And all of a sudden, you got the job or you didn't get the job. So let's just, and I think there's some really good people in the mix. You are the one that I would choose personally because you were there for a long time. You know the agency very well. You know where all the bodies are buried. You and I are friends. I know your opinion on the Second Amendment. I support it. And if it were up to me, you'd already have the job. So there you go. People can get mad at me now if they want somebody else. Go ahead. I don't care. There it is. So now that I've said that, What do you, in your mind, what needs to be cleaned up over at ATF? Because people are going to say, look, and this is, I guess this is the other thing we should talk about, I should ask you, is people say, just close it, ban it, knock it down, do away with it, get rid of ATF. Is that actually a reasonable expectation?
Well, if that was the president's choice, I'd be fully behind it. I couldn't have more faith and confidence in President Trump and his plans. If that was his choice, so be it. I have been told from a couple of ATF people this last week that an internal memo from the top came out bureau-wide saying that ATF is not going to be absorbed by the FBI or by Homeland Security or anyone else, that it's going to remain its own bureau. I mean, that's what I was told by a couple of friends in the agency. So with that, it's going to need leadership and it's going to go forward. And in the interim, or maybe permanently, Director Patel will run it. If the president decides to appoint someone as an assistant director for ATF, just like he appointed Assistant Director Bongino for the FBI, and then keep Director Patel over both agencies. If that's his choice, that's fine. And he may appoint an actual director over ATF. I would think that that's a lot on Director Patel's plate to run two agencies, considering that the FBI is 5 times roughly larger than ATF is. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of work. So when and if that happens, or whatever happens, whoever's going to be director of ATF, I think they need to get rid of all of the things that make people hate ATF. Just to put that in short, when I say hate, just look at the comments out there, the public comments on any interview concerning ATF, and you see what it is people dislike about that agency. And personally, I ask myself, do pilots hate the FAA? Do pharmacists hate the DEA, which of course regulates pharmaceutical companies and pharmacies and everything? No, they don't. You don't hear that kind of disdain and hate for the regulating agency. And there doesn't need to be any of that negativity. I think ATF should support the gun industry and be benevolent to it. I think they should offer training and guidance and help, full transparency. Anyone has a question, give them that answer. But ATF has had for a long time this position where you send something in, some gadget, some gun, they write one of these things that they call a classification, and they'll tell you that this only applies to this item and per you, and for the time being. They reserve the right to change their mind, to tell somebody else a different thing about the same sort of device down the road if they so choose. And that seems ridiculous to me. Explain why your position is what it is, show how it's supported by what is stated in federal law, and give people something they can rely on, and try to regain some credibility and some public confidence by proving why you're doing things and make it consistent.
You've testified in a lot of cases where ATF agents have also testified, and you've indicated to me many times that either they make stuff up or they just don't know, or they're just flat wrong. Is that a training issue? Is that a culture issue? What drives that?
Well, I think in a lot of cases it's, at the street level, it's they just don't know, because agents and IOIs were not trained to the level that they should be, in my opinion. That's not anything they're doing to purposely mislead anyone. That's just an exhibition of poor training. As far as the firearm technology branch, that entity has been intentionally misleading and has knowingly given false information. They know what the 4 elements of the definition of a firearm frame are, and yet they call items firearm frames that don't have more than one or two of them. They know what the definition of a machine gun is, and yet they play with that and use word games when it refers to the requirement of a function of a trigger. They play word games with the function of the shooter's finger, which is a completely different thing. So they're being intentionally misleading and have been. That needs to go immediately. It depends on what level you're talking about.
I know that right now the president has put in a rule that for every new regulation, they need to get rid of 10. I think in his previous administration, they did every new regulation had to get rid of 2 or 3, and they ended up getting rid of a lot of regs that way. So I know it's his desire and intention to reduce the number and scope of the regulatory state. My concern, I would love to see the ATF go away. I see the comments, just defund it, close the doors, sell the building. Yeah, I would love that, but I think you made a point earlier when you said you don't know if it's going to be around or if it would if it would become part of the FBI. If the agency goes away, I think the part that they miss is if the agency goes away, the regulations remain, and somebody's got to enforce them, don't they?
Right. The gun laws aren't going to go away. And if you get down to it, I think anybody who says defund or disband ATF, the real problem with ATF is not that there is an agency that enforces gun law, because they realize, well, then the FBI is going to do it. Homeland Security is going to do it. Some federal agencies still going to do that enforcement of federal gun laws. The problem is how ATF does that. And that's where the problem lies. The not acting within their authority and exerting authority over things that aren't within their authority, not staying within the definitions, the gotcha methodology. Hey, you did something wrong here, so we're going to have to prosecute because then we get a statistic to help justify our existence. That stuff is unnecessary and needs to go away. So it's fixing ATF. That is the problem, not that there is an ATF. If you look back years ago, there were a few people that have always disliked ATF at any given time, but it wasn't to the point that it is now. And that's because of what ATF does, not the fact that their name is ATF.
Maybe a week ago, I don't know, may not have been that long ago, Attorney General Bondi made a comment on a talk show, television talk show somewhere. She said that she had fired somebody, I don't remember who, but somebody at ATF she'd fired, a chief counsel or somebody like that for ATF. So the reason for that is that ATF was going after gun owners, and that is not going to happen in this administration. I think what you're describing is ATF, rather than providing a service to, for example, to firearms dealers, manufacturers, gun stores, whatever, providing information, you mentioned the word transparency. This is the most transparent administration I've seen in my lifetime. And I'm an old dude. And I think a transparent, honest, truthful, transparent ATF would not be looking for gotcha opportunities. They would be helping dealers remain compliant, whatever that means, and providing them with the information necessary to do that. And at the same time, not making stuff up. I mean, it seems to me that you mentioned why people hate the ATF. I got to be honest with you. The reason why I don't like them is because they target honest, regular gun owners. They target honest, regular FFLs, gun stores, with the idea of trying to shut them down. They target manufacturers. They put people in prison who have a stupid little printed card with a printed lightning link on it, which isn't even a cutout and isn't a machine gun, but the guy's still sitting in jail. Those are the things people hate ATF for. How do we fix that? If you were to become director or assistant director of ATF, how is that ever repaired?
Well, I don't know that you can repair that. You can go forward without continuing it. The people who are sitting in prison already, how do you give them that time back? Even if you let them out of prison tomorrow, okay, this agency did wrong. Let's say not that anyone has the authority to do that because they've been convicted by juries and judges and whatnot. But aside from the legalities, even if they were let out of jail tomorrow, how do you give them that time back? You can't make that up to them. But you can go forward not doing it any longer. And the reason it was done in the first place is because, again, if you have an anti-gun administration telling the director, hey, we don't like this, go after it. We don't like that, go after it. As a matter of fact, we don't like guns in general, so find ways to make them go away, or else we're going to put the heat on you. Then that headquarters trickles down these ideas to the legal counsel and to the tech branch saying, find a way, or else we're going to put the heat on you. And then they come up with these things like with bump stocks. All of a sudden, the word automatically means something other than what it did yesterday. The issue with braces, all of a sudden, it is automatically considered a shoulder stock, regardless of how you're using it. They just assume these anti-gun stances and then act on them. And the public and the gun industry are the ones that bear the brunt of it and pay the cost of it. You just need to get away from that stuff. Equipment is just that. No matter what you attach to a gun, it just lays there until you commit a violent crime with it. So, violent crime is what ATF needs to go after. Stop the mass shootings. Spend and expend all your efforts in stopping mass shootings, armed carjacking, armed drug dealing, etc. Don't worry about what like on sawed-off shotguns. In 1934, the idea was, okay, if you take a full-length shotgun and cut it down to a 10-inch barrel and 18 inches overall length, that's a sawed-off shotgun. It's not the fact that somebody, your stock is a half an inch too short or your barrel's an inch too short. The NFA still says what it is, and yes, that stuff's illegal. And the whole concept of getting rid of the NFA, that's another whole story that we are starting to see with the Bruin decision from the Supreme Court. I think you're going to see things like the NFA and the GCA willed away by the Bruin decision as courts start embracing what the Supreme Court said about these things. So I got off on a little tangent there, but
No,
ATF
okay.
just needs to stop worrying about equipment violations when there are violent crimes happening. There are people being shot and drugs being sold by armed dealers and the things that I mentioned. Somebody walks up to you at an intersection, pulls a gun and steals your car and throws you out of it and drives away in it. Those are the things that need to stop a lot more than what kind of a accessory you have bolted onto your gun.
One of the things I'm seeing in this administrative change, and I've kind of felt it myself, to be honest with you, we put up with so much crap for so long as U.S. citizens, not just from ATF, but from the federal government in general, that there's a desire for a pound of flesh. I got to be honest with you. Every time some idiot pulls some stupid shenanigan and resists a Trump administration's effort to change government and bring us back to what he says is common sense, which is not all too common. Maybe we should just call it good sense. And that person gets fired and walked out of the building summarily. I look at that and I go, yay, finally! Right?
I agree. Yeah,
There is a
number more. There's
Dan,
another number of people that need to be walked out of the building there.
at
But I'm
ATF.
not going to say any more about who that would be unless it gets to the point where it's my job to do it.
Okay, but you are. That was my question. Okay. Are there people at ATF that need to be shown the door?
Yes, sir.
Will they be if you get the job?
Yes, sir. You walk in the door as the new director, you have to find out what are the legalities because some people have career status, some don't. What can you do? Transfers are always a possibility, if not firing. But yeah, the people who have been those who've carried out the problems need to go.
That's not something you hear. I've heard that more in the last month and a half. Not even a month and a half. than I've heard in almost 67 years of life. And I've heard Secretary Hegseth say it. Those who are in line get to stay. The rest of them need to go. The rest of them they can find the door. I've heard so many people say that it's a relief, Dan, in my view, to hear that. Not that I'm excited about watching people lose their jobs, but I think some people need to lose their jobs. Look, I'm an employer, as you know, and if somebody pulls shenanigans working for me, I might warn them once, but then they're done. Because I don't put up with that kind of crap. And as a government, we can't put up with that either.
I think that, that brings me back to the whole training thing that I'm always touting, that ATF needs this extremely higher level of training. To use a simple example, let's say that the prior administration had come out with some decision that, hey, ATF, we want you to go after revolvers because now we consider revolvers to be machine guns. Well, everybody in ATF would hold up a revolver and go, what? No way. You're crazy. Where are you getting this? I'm not doing that. And if they had the level of training that I think they need, they'd have been able to have that same reaction concerning braces or receivers or solvent traps or a lot of other things. They'd have already known better and resisted it. But the fact that they're kept uninformed, we'll put it that way. They're kept uninformed. When some of these things come down the pike, they don't know enough to say, hey, this is wrong. This is absolutely off the reservation. We're not doing this.
And so you become director of ATF. Let's just say that happens, which I honestly hope happens. And the administration changes and you're still there. And they haven't fired you, changed the deal, whatever, and you got an anti-gun administration that comes in, and some congressman, maybe the president, whatever, says, I want you to do X, and and your agents know that what they're asking you to do is unconstitutional, incorrect, illegal, wrong, put whatever label you want on it. We've seen that happen with ATF a million times. Some senator walks through and says, I don't like this, do something about it. And I'll pick on President Trump. I don't like the bump stock, figure out a way to make it illegal. And that was something that he did that I strongly disagreed with, and I know you did too. What is the ATF director's response to that if the response is correct? What do you do as ATF director when some anti-gun official or anti-gun president wants to push you to do something is not within the law and is unconstitutional and violates the rights of citizens?
I think what you need is a director. In the first place, you need a director of any given agency who not only knows the law, but knows the technology of what it is that they regulate. So in the case of the previous administration had Dettelbach as the director, they could walk in and tell him, we need you to change your procedure on braces or whatever. I don't think he knew a brace from a stock. I don't think he knew a solvent trap from a silencer. I don't think he knew a forced reset trigger from a machine gun. He didn't have the wherewithal to counsel anyone on that. And if you have a director who has expertise in firearms, that director can say, Mr. or Ms. Congressman, Congresswoman, Mr. President, whomever, let me explain how this thing works. And because that's the way it works, it doesn't satisfy the statutory definition that you're wanting to apply. So it's not a legal move. And I respectfully suggest that you urge Congress to change the definition so that it applies if that's your wish. But going down this road is a losing proposition. At that point, you have done your job to inform them. And you need to have that information to be able to do that. And at that point, if they insist you break the law, then I don't care who you are. At that point, you need to respectfully resign, and they need to find someone else who's willing to just be a yes man or a hatchet man and do things that are illegal. But I would not do that.
What you've just described is somebody who honors the oath that they took.
Thank you.
There's a whole lot of politicians that get these offices that they take that oath because it's a perfunctory thing. They put their hand on the Bible or whatever, and they just repeat after me, and away they go. But when the rubber meets the road, they don't even think about it, and they go on. And I, for one, Dan, am sick and tired of people like that. And you're not one. I'm grateful. You're welcome. I'm grateful. And that's why I asked you the question. I think at some point it becomes an issue of, look, I'm not doing that. I've explained to you why it's wrong. I've explained to you why it's a poor decision. And I think you're right. You point the president back at Congress and you say, sir, this has got, ma'am, whatever, this has got to be changed by Congress because it's not something we can do unilaterally. This is what the law is. This is how it's applied. This is what the definition means. This is how it fits. I can't do what you want me to do legally. It needs to be changed by Congress if you wish to do this. And then they can go back to Congress and see if they can get Congress to do it. Maybe yes, maybe no. But if they say, no, just do it, at that point, it's honor your oath or not. And if you got the balls to just resign, then I think you do that. And if you don't, then you're a coward. And you've dishonored your oath. And we've had a whole hell of a lot of people, pardon my language, who have done exactly that. And I'm tired of them.
Well, when I get contacted by lawyers several times a week with new cases, and that's one of the first things I tell them. I'm looking for an expert who can help me with XYZ. And I say, fine, I'll take a look at what you have. But know this, once I've looked at the facts, I'll give you my opinion on it. And if my opinion helps you in your case, so be it. But if my opinion goes counter to what you're trying to do, then you need to find somebody else, because I'm not going to lie for you. If I did, what's the point? I'm no good. My opinion's no good. The whole process is no good. So all I've ever done is tell the truth on these issues, and that's what you have to do.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. And like I said, I mean, people who have it's the same oath. People who have taken that oath know the oath. And there are those who honor it and those who are not. And it seems like we have an administration of people who honor their oath. And if they'll do that, then we can have a government that actually works. Well, listen, we've been chatting for a while. Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't, or anything you want to mention that I forgot?
Well, I'll say this one thing. When I see the comments by viewers of the various interviews I do, and they say, well, hey, bottom line, he was ATF too. So how many times did he shoot somebody's dog? How many times did he arrest somebody for one of these things? And now he's talking out of the other side of his mouth. That's not the case. The proof is my cases were all proactive, working on armed drug dealers. And it was mostly undercover cases, except for things like the War Dogs guy from Diveroli. He was an armed international arms trafficker. But 3D printed guns didn't exist when I was an agent, so I didn't, that wasn't an issue. FRTs weren't in existence. Solvent traps. ATF at that time said solvent traps are fine. If they're designed and intended for cleaning your gun, that's fine. They said that about braces. If you put it on your gun to strap it to your forearm, that's fine. None of this stuff that we're talking about existed when I was an agent. So for the record, I didn't work both sides of these issues, and I'm not contradicting myself.
Thank you for clearing that up. Actually, I knew that, but you're right. A lot of people don't. I just want to comment on that. I think there's certainly, if you're talking out of both sides of your mouth, if you have been that guy who's done exactly what you're railing against, then yeah, there's a question of are you credible or are you hypocritical? And I know that you're credible and not hypocritical, so I'm really glad that you cleared that up. But I think the other side of that is, do you want a politician to take over an agency, which is what Diddlebach essentially was, who doesn't understand the agency, doesn't understand the laws, doesn't understand the rules? Do you want a person who's never been in that agency, has no idea how it works? I don't think people understand. I've never run a government agency, but I've been a business owner for a long time. I've owned several businesses. I can imagine running a government agency is not an easy thing to do. And if you don't understand how it works and you don't understand the way the bureaucracy can eat you alive or can get around you, then you're going to be a figurehead who's going to frustrate yourself and not accomplish anything. And so I'm of the opinion that if we can find somebody who has run a government agency before or been involved in a government agency before, Director Kash Patel comes to mind. The dude's got a resume in the government this bloody long, and that's important because he has to understand how the agencies work in order to do anything to correct them. You have a resume this long, and in that agency, you know, as I said, where the bodies are buried. You've already said you know exactly who needs to go and who needs to stay. You know how it works. They're not going to hide from you. They're not going to pull wool over your eyes. They're not going to convince you that something is right when it's wrong. And that's why, Dan, you have my absolutely unquestioned support for this job. You are exactly the right person for it. And I will say that until they decide on somebody. I hope it's you. It may not be. But I really appreciate you coming on the show because you are the guy. And if you're watching this and you don't think so, you're welcome to your opinion. You certainly can voice that in the comments. And that's fine. I mean, that's what the comments are for.
Thank you, Joel. And for anybody who cares, because I've seen this comment a lot too, yes, I know how to take a Glock apart.
I would hope so.
I've been through that armor school and 14 others. I know how to take a lot of guns apart.
Yeah, I would hope so. Dan, thanks for coming on the show, brother. And
thank you.
Let me know if there's anything else I can do to help, okay?
I will. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you again for watching the entire interview. I appreciate it. And if you have comments, you want to leave them, please do that in the comment section. We can agree to disagree. As I said during the interview, I fully support Dan for this job. I think he's the best man for the job. I know there are others, and they're great. So I'm not disparaging anybody. I just am of the opinion that Dan is the number one pick in my mind. Now, if you disagree with me, that's fine. Put your comment in the description. We can agree to disagree. We're all supporting the Second Amendment and hoping that ATF can either be disbanded and done away with, which would be kind of cool, but the laws are going to be enforced by somebody, or straightened up and the appropriate people dismissed and the right people staying in the agency and hired in the agency. That's what I'm looking forward to. All right. Well, anyway, thank you very much. Check me out on Rumble and also on X. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can do that by going to GunGuyTV Crew. There is a link in the description. Thank you very much. Stay safe.